What's happening? What's happening? What's happening?
Going on.
We're in the building. They're not even ready. Who we got? Who riding shotgun today?
It's me, Jackie Lukman. What's going on, brother?
Hey man, listen, man. I'm here ready to rumble. You know what I'm saying? I said to myself, I said, man, we're gonna have a whole lot of testosterone on this show today. I need someone to help me steer this boat. You know what I mean? Make sure we're going in the right direction.
Dose of estrogen to balance that out.
we need that, but not just any dose of estrogen. We need someone that's fair and balanced, because sometimes we get thrown off course because white supremacy is a motherfucker. They'll take you all over the place. You know what I mean? But I'm happy to have you on here today. For folks who are unfamiliar, this is Riot Starter TV, Black Power Media. We're in the building. I am Kalonji Changa. Riding shotgun is Jackie Lukman. Yes. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know who Jackie is, Jackie hosts By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik. And she's also a host on numerous shows here at Black Power Media. You can catch her on the Remix Morning Show. You can catch her on Lukman Nation. She has Lunchtime with Jackie. You can catch her with all kinds of stuff. I was going to crack a joke, but you already know. What we're going to do.
Power Lunch. You just gave it a new name.
I just gave it a whole new name. What kind of Kalonji would I be if I didn't do that?
Yep. That's okay though. But I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I'm really, really, honored that you invited me to ride shotgun on with you on Riot Starter, because low key, I am one too. Yeah, I'm a Riot Starter.
I already know. I mean, we don't. That seat is not reserved for suckers. You know what I mean? They got to be clear about that. And aside from that, it's like it's rare that you'll catch a co-host on Riot Starter TV. And
that's true.
I felt that you were the person for the job, and definitely happily have you on. Today, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because of the fact that you are an organizer. And this show right here is all about organizing, solidarity. With our organization, FTP movement, and others, we're working towards building a united front against fascism, taking on that traditional component in peace that was started way back when in the 60s, 69, so on and so forth. So I wanted to definitely invite some folks that are not just about theory, but people who are about practice as well. We have a couple special guests. What I would like to do, because you have a couple comrades, one of them was Set Trip, and I ain't gonna tell the folks which one it was. I ain't gonna say but he's trying to form a coup already before the show even got started. But
that's how they roll. That's how
I know.
Even though they're my comrades and my mentors, two of these brothers really, really are my mentors. I know how they be. So
okay. So what I'm gonna do, since you ride a shotgun or whatever, I'm gonna have you introduce your two comrades first, and then I'll introduce this other gentleman who's caused me more gray hairs than life itself. So if you don't mind getting started, we'll bring them on one by one.
Absolutely. Well, the Set Tripper and my comrade here in Washington, D.C., in the Pan-African Community Action and in Black Alliance for Peace is Netfa Freeman. The good brother Netfa is host of a radio show on WPFW that I just blanked it, completely gone, because I just finished my own show. And Voices with Vision. There you go. I just needed to breathe. Voices with Vision on WPFW here in Washington, D.C. Netfa, what's up? How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. Honored to be here.
Fantastic. And the other gentleman, and he really is my mentor, and this is the first and probably the only time I'm ever going to tell him that, because I don't want his head to get big. But he is the national organizer for the Black Alliance for Peace, and that is Ajamu Baraka. Ajamu, come on in here, my brother. Good to see you.
Yes. Well, it's good to see you, my sister, as always. And you are someone that I continue to be amazed by your energy, your insightfulness, and I'm glad to be here with you and with Brother Kalanje, who's another brother that has always been on the case for years, and he's here to help start a progressive and revolutionary riot, and I'm glad to be part of that.
Hey, brother, it's a rebellion. We just got that riot up there to draw them in. You know, we know what it is. We know what time it is. But definitely honored to have you and Netfa on. Of course, Ajamu's like, man, I don't know, man. You might be neck and neck as far as guests who have appeared most here on Riot Starter TV. So, you know, you up on it. It took a while to get you on here, but you're here now. Netfa, on the other hand, you know, he ain't been rocking with me like that.
Blame it on me. Okay. Headed off at the pass. Blame it on me.
It's a DC thing.
The real story will come out. Truth crushed to the earth rises.
He took it there. He old French Fanon head. Anyway, we appreciate you all for coming on the real. Shout out to BAP, PACA, and all the organizers out there that's putting in this work. This other brother right here, no stranger to danger. You know what I'm saying? This brother right here, he's been putting in work for quite a while. You know, I dare say at least a half a century on the low. Former political prisoner and veteran freedom fighter of the Black Liberation Army and the Black Panther Party. None other than my main man, Dhoruba Bin Wahad. What's happening, my man? And he got the thing on mute, so that's how you know he started off talking junk.
I'm fine, son. How you doing, man? I see you got the crew there, man. You got the sister there. I'm glad you got the sister there. Put a little levity into this, you know, because with left to you, man, we joke ourselves out, man.
Yeah, we'll be in trouble.
But Ajamu, man, I'm glad I was able to get you. I got your information, and that for, of course, you know. It's amazing. I call him. I don't know why I keep calling him like a youth or something. And maybe I'm telling on myself because his dreadlocks are straight. I know. I understand you dyed yours though, Kalanje, but Netflix, you know, he ain't messing around. He going straight, no chaser. You know,
I'll dye my head, knock it off, man. Anyway, see, he coming in the gate with it. Your mic is kind of it sounds like a little bit of static, Dhoruba.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Not the camera. You start moving the camera, but yeah, it's all good.
I'm using the earphone. Okay. Maybe that's it.
Well, we'll figure it out as we go along.
I'm not clear or something.
You clear. It's just like kind of a digital type sound. Do you all hear that, or is that just me?
No, I hear it. It's like
it's a little
sort
static.
of a static echo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really? Maybe if I put both of them in, it'll change that. Let me see.
I don't know. Or it might be the mic, but you know, do your thing. If we need to mute you for a second for you to get it together, that's cool.
Hello? Is this better?
Nah, it's still kind of staticky, but you know, we good. We're gonna go ahead and rock regardless. Let's see if you know, if you could adjust it offline or something. But definitely again, we appreciate you all tapping in with us on this special edition Riot Starter TV. And it was important for us to be here because as I mentioned to our good sister Jackie Lukman, who is all our comrades, Netfa, I wanted to you know, we wanted to make sure that we get a perspective and a analysis from folks who are actually ground troops, folks who put in work and not just you know, come by and do type buys on the internet. You know, so you know, definitely we're happy to have you on. We wanted to talk about several things. One being international solidarity and the necessity, because we've had you know, of course, many of us do local work within our organizations. We do national work as far as, you know, building united fronts, so on and so forth. But you know, and we know that BAP in particular, we know you all have been consistent on an international level as well. So definitely we appreciate that. So I wanted to maybe start off with Dhoruba on, we know you just had you just came back from a 10-day trip abroad in Europe, I believe. So I kind of want to, you know, kind of spark some talk and some works that you wanted to see coming to fruition. So can you speak on that a little bit?
First of all, man, as usual, I'm really honored and flattered to be here on your program, man, and talk to folks, and especially with the two comrades and the sister, because I value, at least their politics and their acumen, especially Ajamu, and being able to pull together a lot of disparate forces and individuals into some type of coherent group and movement. Having said that, the purpose that I went on the trip at the invitation of Ajamu organization in Vienna that I had that had invited me on a couple of occasions to come to Vienna and speak to activists and students and Muslims around the issues that were confronting us in the metropoles in the U.S. and there. But this particular time, I did have in mind trying to hook people up. In the last several months, I've been really keen on trying to put folks that I respect together and let them, take it where it needs to go. We are in a very dire situation historically at this particular moment, and it requires that all hands on deck, and those brothers and sisters who can organize should be given the opportunity to organize. I believe those brothers and sisters who are looking for organizations to join should be given the opportunity to see these organizations up front, analyze them and join them. I think that these things are really crucial right now. The right wing, the white supremacists, the neo-fascists, or whatever we want to call them, they're on the upswing. Over a third of the American population is genuinely locked in to a neo-fascist or democratic fascist paradigm of power. We know that globally, the nations and regions are teetering on the brink of war. And so with that in mind, I really accepted the tour. I visited Germany, two cities in Germany, Berlin and Frankfurt, Vienna in Austria, Rome in Italy, and Paris. And in all of these venues, I found a very receptive, activist communities, especially amongst the migrant people who are undergoing severe repression and struggles for legalization and racism and all of these things. Muslims who are under the hammer of Islamophobia. And so the first thing that really came to mind when I took on this engagement was Ajamu and NEFTA and the folks with the Black Alliance for Peace, because I realized that in order to well, at least I thought I realized that in order to really combat the criminalization of solidarity movements now, it's really difficult for individual movements to express solidarity with organizations and groups that have been placed on the on the terrorist list by their respective governments. It makes it very difficult for them to do solidarity work, say, with the Palestinians. The BDS, we know, is practically criminalized in the United States. Opposition to white supremacist foreign policies, whether they're French or British, or whether it's expressed in NATO's involvement in Africa, it's very difficult for us to express internationally solidarity and coordinate our activities. However, I realized that with the Black Alliance for Peace, if we posture our resistance to imperialism and white supremacy in the call for peace, it allows us to project ourselves also into other arenas like the environmental movement that realizes that war and the use of chemicals and chemical weapons are a threat to this planet, have been and remain so. And so I encourage different organizations in Europe during this particular course um, to reach out to each other and form a united front against the rise of fascism and the results of their nation's foreign policies in Africa and the southern hemisphere, specifically against NATO and the EU's involvement with NATO. So that's where we're at, and we have two guests that will be coming on later on, who saw this vision that I had, saw it very clearly, and they have brought a lot of people to the table who are willing to begin to build this type of internationalism, this type of international front. And that's why I wanted them on the program with Ajamu and NEFTA, so they could lay out how they see this moving forward in relationship to the work that we're doing with AFRICOM, against AFRICOM in Africa, as well as what we're going to be trying to do in terms of dealing with the organization of the police and the garrison state and the police state. Many of the European countries are reflective of this condition that I call democratic fascism. And I think that black people in the United States, as the largest national minority in the United States that have roots going all the way back to the beginning of the Republic, I think we have a really good handle on how to deal with the national security state and its use of white supremacy and fascism to empower itself. So I think we have a lot to offer to these to comrades in the struggle. I think that we should work on the proposition or around the spirit that there are no strangers in the struggle for freedom and liberation and the emancipation of humanity. Only comrades have never met. And so I want to introduce these comrades to all of you. I want to I hope that we could hook up some type of centralized lecture series where we could bring comrades like Professor Smalls and other brothers like Ajamu to do a 1 hour series on movement strategy, on some of the political lessons that we have learned, so that these other organizations could all tune in at the same time and then submit their responses, and we could turn those responses into a data and information center to so movements could take advantage of this. This is my vision, but it's kind of foggy, and I know Netfa and Ajamu are clearer, much clearer on how we could proceed internationally on doing something in terms of that, building that unity. So that's where I'm at, and so I know Ajamu got a little bit of time, so I think that maybe he could respond first and everything.
Right on. Right on. Thank you, Dhoruba, my third co-host and panelist. But anyway, definitely Ajamu, definitely speak to what he's saying, and also what the right wing, the rise of right wing fascism means to us, to Africans home and abroad.
I think you're muted, Ajamu. You're muted.
Yeah, I appreciate that analysis, and as always, I learn from our collective leader. I think what you laid out is clearly how we have to move. I mean, the vision is a vision that recognizes where we are as a movement, as an African people, as colonized people. In the context of a historical moment in which we are seeing the real shift of power away from Europe. We are actually seeing and experiencing the end of white world supremacy. The problem, of course, or the challenge is that the European colonialists are not prepared to allow that shift to take place without a fight to the finish, uh, without a fight in which they seem to be prepared to take everybody down with them. So what that means for us is how do we not only resist, but how do we take advantage of the opportunities that exist for us to advance our forces to be able to undermine and sometimes even preempt the moves being made by the enemy to basically try to maintain their global hegemony. And why it might sound like a cliche is really axiomatic. That basically, without more effective organization, we aren't
Hmm.
going to be able to do anything. So, what the Black Alliance for Peace has been trying to do, first beginning in the landmass known as the United States of America, that settler colonial space, is to begin the process of trying to bring together these Black left forces that either have that kind of clarity in terms of what we need to do in terms of organization, uh, and a recognition that we got to fight because we are involved and at this point a one-sided war against us, uh, but also a recognition that while we start in North America, we've got to recognize that our responsibility and our strength lies in our ability to link up with forces in the Southern Hemisphere, in throughout the what we call our region here in the Americas and on the African continent, and from there linking up with other um, um, anti any other forces that are involved in anti-colonial struggles to build the kind of structure we have to build to be able to concentrate our power. So, the context that you have been able to make, uh, the next step is for us to, of course, engage in conversations to try to find those basic elements of unity. I think we already know what those elements are, but then to begin to talk about how we try to relate to one another in an organized fashion. One of the things that we have recognized in the Black Alliance for Peace is that in fact we have to begin to expand this formation because we are getting consistently requests for groups outside of North America to join. And in fact, we've started that process of bringing in groups from outside of the U.S. And it seems like that the historical moment is such that we have to really accelerate that process. So, building or expanding the alliance or moving toward another formation that will allow for the international cooperation that we have to have might be the route to go. But either way, we have to be committed to building structures, and that's I see no other way but that.
You know, I wonder how you see, Ajamu, the process of organizing African people, particularly domestically in the United States, in the face of this new red scare, black scare era that we're in the face of the Ukraine, the EU NATO proxy war in Ukraine against Russia, since we've seen the demonization of Russia that began really in 2016 with the election, and the Clinton campaign blaming Russia for her losing the election, and cooking up this whole Russiagate scheme, the whole idea of anti-communism becoming kind of a main thing. It's a main thing again in this country, which would suggest to me that it never went away. This strain of virulent anti-communism. It's almost like a second religion, or an unofficial religion in this country, and it's as if people in this country hate their idea of communists almost as much as they hate African people and poor people. And seeing though the extension of that strain of anti-communism bleed over into the so-called left, how has that impacted the ability to organize anti-imperialist, anti-war formations and actions and political education in that kind of an environment where, at least domestically in the US, or on the left, we're seeing that there's a lot of anti-communism there too. And there's a lot of folks who are siding with the empire in this particular conflagration in Ukraine against Russia.
Well, I think first thing we recognize is that the kind of anti-communism that you have correctly alluded to really never went away. It was always part of the left experience in the United States of America, and throughout parts of Western Europe also. It took different forms at different stages, but I think, as you correctly have recognized, it is coming back in a more naked and pronounced way, partly because of the deepening crisis that the capitalist order finds itself in, and the fact that it recognizes that more and more people are beginning to come to the conclusion that reform is not possible, that these contradictions are irreconcilable, and that people are looking beyond the capitalist order and beginning to experiment or look at new models, looking at what is being attempted in places like in Latin America, going back to our own history and looking at these various attempts that revolutionary forces engaged in on the African continent. And that is, it represents an existential threat to the capitalist order, to the colonial capitalist system. So they are more than prepared and already involved in sharpening the repressive tools of the state to prevent and to undermine the prestige.
Ajamu's kind of froze right now. Yeah. Jump in. That's what you
do you still hear me?
Yeah,
You kind of froze up.
At a storm, it's going to be difficult, so we be going in and out. We definitely in the global south.
Okay. Yeah. You're a little clearer now.
Okay. So what I was saying, I keep my response a little bit shorter because of the connectivity issue.
Good.
That basically they recognize that the kind of internationalism that we are articulating here on this show, that the Black Alliance for Peace is all about, is in fact a threat, because they recognize the fragility of this system, and the contradictions that they're not going to be able to address effectively. That's why there's more of a commitment on the part of the state to more naked forms of repression, because the ideological glue has come apart. The ability to persuade people to go along with the system is not as effective as it was before. So they are now engaged in more direct repression. And Ukraine is one of the contradictions that has emerged, because the U.S. Believes that in order to maintain its global hegemony, that it has to accomplish various goals, including the disarticulation of the German and Russian economy. The U.S. is committed to trying to control the European economy. That's key for them in terms of them attempting to try to control and maintain their global economic hegemony. So these are factors that they are dealing with, but they also recognize that for them to engage in this kind of militarism, they have to have a degree of consensus in the U.S. They have to have popular support for their aggressive policies. And that's why they have to target us, because they recognize the traditional role that the Black liberation movement has played in this country, the Black radical tradition, Black radical internationalism. And we become the primary target, because they know that a revolutionary transformation will not take place in the United States of America without the leadership of African people. So therefore, these attempts to try to build these international structures are going to be targeted. That's why they are watching and seeing the kind of work the brother Dhoruba's involved in. They haven't finished with him yet, because they recognize the standing he has with our forces. And when we are engaged in these kinds of this kind of international work, they see this as, again, an existential threat. So, this is the historical moment we find ourselves in. And people got to recognize that this is a very dangerous moment, and have that recognition reflected in the seriousness of what we engage in.
We want give Net for the opportunity to jump in, and then we'll go back to you, Dhoruba, if that's all right.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on some stuff that Ajamu was saying, and also the other part of Jackie's question was like, what do we do in terms of our movement? And I think that it's important for us to remember that when we're making an assessment of what's out there and how the responses and people's maybe embrace of what seems to be coming from the ruling class, that there's a class issue to it. So on the working class level, if you will, or the regular people, these ideas, this anti-communism that they want to propagate is really not germinating so well anyway. We know these contradictions are intensifying in terms of the failure of capitalism and neoliberalism. I don't even know if I want to call it a failure. That's really not the right word, but the results of it, and that people can see on the, the lies that they tell are easy to see as they funnel money and lob all kinds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. And then the crisis, like in Jackson, Mississippi, and all the other taking back the what you call moratoriums on rent and all these kind of things. People see these are contradictions. You don't have to have any deep analysis. And those people who may appear and allow us to think maybe that there's an embrace of their anti-communism really represent particularly Black people, represent a class of our people, and that regular, on the grassroots level, and people really involved and really concerned about a radical transformation of the conditions of our people are not accepting that. And that, as Ajamu said, they're also recognizing the threat that not just internationally, but even some of the projects that emerge, even if it's not fully conscious, some of the projects that emerge on the ground, mutual aid cooperations, and even community control of the police type programs, or actually what you call the dual power programs, they're there. We have to remember that they're there, and a lot of them have serious revolutionary clarity about the system. So we have to know that that's there, and that's also, so we don't, and I do this too. Sometimes I see the propaganda that the enemy puts out, and because I'm seeing it, and I know we all know better, we almost forget and we assume that it's being accepted by everybody. But it's not always being accepted by everybody. And the people who seem to be supposed to represent us, parroting this stuff and making us believe that it's being accepted, really represent only a class. So we have to, the answer to your question, we have to really do what we're doing, these more radical responses to survival and addressing the system, and then make that, make an organic connection and structural, because Ajamu talked about, got to build structures that take our struggle internationally, that link up the struggles, the radical struggles in other places in the world with what's happening to us domestically. Make the parallels like we're trying to do in the Black Alliance for Peace, like AFRICOM, the U.S. Africa Command, is the counterpart to the 1033 program. This is what we talk about when we say neo-fascism and democratic, the appearance of there's some kind of democratic choice, but also the acknowledgement that whatever democracy there is really only among the ruling class forces.
So, Dhoruba, I want you to add on, because Nefa mentioned AFRICOM. Of course, we know that AFRICOM, the EU, and NATO are right now trying to literally eat Africa alive. What is there? How do we go about organizing a front, an international front, to not only push them out of Africa, but throughout the diaspora as a whole? What do you say to that?
First, let me address the tail end of what Jackie and Esther and Ajamu touched on. Because
your mic is.
Can you hear me? I'm muted. Can you hear me? No.
We hear you, but it's distorted. It's really distorted. Kalonji, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
Okay, let me put
I'm
this
trying to
up.
mute myself for him, but yeah, you may want to
Is
tap
this
out and
better?
tap.
Is this
Yeah,
better?
it sounds
Is
better.
this better?
Yes.
Yeah, I had it on the computer rather than the AirPods.
Okay.
Okay. So listen. So I just want to, before I jump on that international part, I want to jump on this piece. It's very, very important because we talked about communism and how communism, which is really anti-socialism, is really the basis of almost all of the U.S. Domestic politics. But the most important thing is how we have organizations that are coming up now that can readily be encapsulated into certain parts of the neoliberal and the neoconservative agenda. And I'll give you an example. I told you about this group in Austin, Texas, that was demonstrating, and they were all geared up, with guns and everything, dressed like Panthers and all of this. And they were marching down the main street in Austin, and they were talking about reparations. They said Panthers pull up for reparations. You can see it on YouTube. And then when you listen to what they're talking about, they were talking about reparations, migrants go home, reparations, close the borders, reparations. You got money for all these immigrants, but you ain't got money for black people. I'm telling you how this got encapsulated. Now and then when you let them really talk, their analysis and their politics is all screwed up, scrambled up. They don't understand that both reparations and migrant and the issue of migrants is directly tied to imperialism and white supremacy and the white supremacist construct. The nations that these people are coming from are the direct results of U.S. foreign policy and European policy in their countries that has rendered their countries useless to its own people. And so when they talk about close the borders, that they got money for Latinos on welfare, and all of this stereotype. You can see how this movement could easily be encapsulated into the rivalry between black people and non-black folks, who we know the enemy always uses, and they try to play us all against each other. The same way they try to use intersectionality in order to divide movements. And they fund certain levels, they fund certain microaggressions to the exclusion of others. And then the ones that they fund wind up talking down to the leadership of everybody as if we're supposed to be on their bandwagon. I think Kalonji and I just had a little a back and forth jokingly about that a little earlier today. So what I'm saying here is that the left has always been a victim of its own dogma, and we know that with the Black Panther Party, how the Communist Party was constantly attacked and subverted in order to turn away from the class analysis of the Black Panther Party, and they use Zionism, they use the Jewish left in order to do this. They had a whole program called Dear Irving, where they were writing letters to Jewish funders and artists and in the music industry, telling them that the Panthers were that the Panthers were anti-Semitic, that the Panthers' support of Palestine. You understand? It was talking about how we hated Jews, and they're giving money to the Panther 21 Defense Committee. So we need to understand that the left that we're talking about really doesn't exist in terms of a real left. I think that when the comrades come on from Europe, they're going to tell you the same thing about the Social Democrats in Europe, and how social Democrats will say that they support that they support a two-state solution in Israel, which is a ridiculous notion, but they support a two-state solution. So those who oppose the Zionist European settler state of Israel are in fact anti-Semitic. Okay, so therefore, and this is a problem. And during the course of my address to them, I said, well, first of all, the conversation is skewed, because in order to be anti-Semitic in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, you have to be anti-Palestinian. because they're the only Semites in the argument, you know. And so who are we talking about here? And this is the death knell. This is the killer punch to white supremacy and Zionism, that the European settler state of Israel has no DNA, no religious, no cultural connection to the land, to the Levant, and to the Palestinians. And as long as we keep going along with this idea that to be anti-Zionist is to be anti-Semitic, we're buying into that. And that plays itself over right here with the Anti-Defamation League and AIPAC. When you talk to the left lawyers and say, why don't we bring a lawsuit? Why don't we bring a show cause against AIPAC and have them have them declared as an agent of a foreign government? Because AIPAC almost literally writes U.S. policy on Israel, almost verbatim. And so, and they perform as the agent of a foreign government, but they're not seen as that, okay? They're seen as a legitimate lobby. But the left has, the institutions here have no problem declaring organizations from the left as agents of a foreign government. So what do these lawyers tell me? Oh, they're too busy dealing with this. They can't deal with this. It's too much, you know. And so we need to understand that on the left right now, what's called the left is a neoliberal tendency to buy in to the simulationist politics of the status quo. So I think it's very important for us to understand that, because we're going to make a lot of enemies just from this broadcast.
Surprise.
You know, we're going to make, we're going to make a lot of enemies.
More than we have right now?
Yeah, I know. We can't seem like we can't stand no more, but you know how that is, man.
My shoulders are big. I think we can. We do all right.
Yeah, I know. Kalanji's back is strong, man. Me, I got a bad hip. I got a bad hip. I can't take it.
Now you got a bad hip.
Yeah. But you know what, Dhoruba? I'm so glad you made those connections. You raised those points, because I think that we, particularly African organizers in this country, we kind of play at solidarity, right? And we are fine with solidarity with certain countries, like, you know, we're fine with with solidarity with African countries, with Caribbean countries, but we do forget that there is a left, an actual left in European countries. And I got to admit, I've been guilty of this too, because I'm just like, I love to travel, and my whole thing is, except for Europe, I don't need to go to Europe. I don't want to go to Europe. There's nothing in Europe I want to see. But if I am serious about international solidarity with people in the struggle who are engaged in the ongoing fight against imperialism and this capitalist imperialist system, then I can't leave them out. And I think this is a conversation that has to start here among so-called, you know, organizers in this country, because I don't think it's the case. And then I want to kick this to Netfa. I don't think it's the case that organizers in other countries are not wanting to have international solidarity with us. I kind of feel like they are wondering and waiting where the hell we've been and what are we waiting for. And do you get that feeling too, especially organizing on a local level here in Washington, D.C., and making these international connections from D.C. police policy, you know, jump out squads, housing policy, connecting that to, you know, the 1033 program, and then defense spending, and then connecting that to Africa, but then also connecting that to the kind of money that's being thrown into this war in Ukraine, and how that all actually matters. But it seems like it matters to everybody else in the world, other so-called leftists in the world, and we're not getting it. And I think the connection needs to be made from here outward. And I'm wondering what you think about that, Netfa.
Before you jump on that, I'm gonna let you jump on that. Listen, this is a legacy of the narrow nationalism of the 60s. This is a legacy when the Black Panther Party had a class analysis. You had these pork chop nationalists, these dashiki wearing Afrocentric nationalists talking about we had alliances with white people and the devil, and we was talking all this Marxist stuff. This is a legacy of that. Okay, this is a continuation of that, because these kids that are out here talking about reparations for the genetic heirs of African slaves, they don't understand that it was the expansion of European mercantilism and the white supremacist construct of colonialism that made slavery possible. So to not to understand the continuation of that now is it's some knucklehead stuff. Nothing, but go ahead, brother.
No, I think that's good, and I think what you it's kind of a segue into part of my response was also being on the flip side of that. There's also, in terms of what you alluded to, or Jackie, was that there are people outside of the U.S., the radical left, that are looking for making connections that are inside the U.S. And I think and actually looking and respecting that radical tradition. I think that's the flip side of what Dhoruba talked about, the legacy of the Black radical tradition, the real Black radical tradition. People like Malcolm, people like Panther, like Dhoruba, and all of them that actually were internationalists back then, and gave set the stage for how the radical tradition and how the radical movement, Black radical movement in the U.S. is perceived, and that they're trying to search for that kind of stuff. Malcolm, Robert Williams, so many different forces that had that international purview, and that we had to resurrect that. We had to build it, and people are hungry. Even as far back as I can think, the first what you call it, social form, world social forums. Where, and ever since the World Social Forums, the different international message of left forces, and not always so radical. I mean, that social forum was pretty broad in terms of, but was always like, well, when is the U.S. people going to get together? Get it together in terms of how we confront imperialism. There has to be something adequate or sufficient or formidable within the United States, a formidable left, a formidable anti-imperialist, internationalist left. And there's always been that looking toward when it was going get together. And sometimes I think, in my view, because doing a little bit of travel that I have, you have some asking that question, and some who maybe maybe it's wrong to say romanticize, but kind of think that there's still some of that left. And I think there is, but it's not strong at all. Like Dhoruba said, there's kind of been under attack. It's been under attack, and that it's weaker than people, I think, perceive it to be. And we have to build it. And I think it's important. We have to build it, and we have to internally the class struggle that we have to wage within the United States, particularly looking at the radical Black movement as the leadership of what should be left here. That class struggle has to confront these reactionary perspectives and utterances that anti-Russia and anti this and that, and embracing the dispositions and the interest of the ruling class as if we have some stake in that, and even things that are anti-Black. Ultimately, we pull the troops out of Africa, then it's going to be chaos. Haiti's chaos, instead of really recognizing what imperialism is doing, and that was domestically and internationally as being one and the same system.
No doubt.
I think let me just say this enough to hit that shit right on the head. Listen, let me say this here. It begins with the Black Caucus. It begins with these Negro Republicans. We need to build, when we talk about building this America, AFRICOM out of Africa, we have to go to them Negroes that's sitting up in the Black Caucus that are part of the congressional committees and that's forming U.S. policy. And we have to say, if you're going to represent the Black community and the African diaspora, we have to call for the removal of the U.S. forces out of the Sahel. We want to review a U.S. policies, military training policy. We have to build that type of movement right here against them Negroes. This is the class struggle that Neff is talking about, because those people in the Congressional Black Caucus are the heirs of the pimps from the poverty, from the war on poverty. That's how they got in there. They were pimps in the war on poverty. That's when the Congressional
domestic compradors.
I was there when they got hooked up, and I don't think Ajamu was young enough not to remember that his damn self. You see what I'm saying?
I don't think he's young enough either, but he has a few minutes left with us.
Yeah.
So we want to definitely get some feedback from Ajamu real quick.
Yeah, so Ajamu, how can we do this?
Well, I think one thing that was a couple of things real quick. You're absolutely right. we've got to expose the neo-colonial collaborators, and that's one reason why Jackie and NETFA, the Black Alliance for Peace, Mid-Atlantic, threw a picket on the Congressional Black Caucus a few days ago. I think that was on Saturday, basically calling them out. So yes, but we have no illusions though about that. You see, they're not going to respond to us at this point because they recognize how weak we are organizationally. So our target is the general public, trying to raise people's awareness, people's consciousness of these contradictions. And as we do that and build structures, then we be able to be in a position to put pressure on these bourgeois politicians. That's really the first point. But the second point is that, you know, one of the things about this Ukraine situation that keeps on coming up in this conversation, we probably need to talk about just a little bit before I leave, is that one of the positive consequences of Ukraine for us is that it exposed the existence of the White Lives Matter More movement, with the co-directors being Zelensky out of Ukraine and Joe Biden. It exposed that these Europeans are more concerned with protecting white life, protecting their hegemony, than the lives and the prosperity and the realities of people outside of Europe. That line of demarcation, it has never been more clear as a consequence of Ukraine. People in the global South, people who find themselves in the northern countries in Europe and in North America who are from the global South, who have been racialized, it is absolutely clear that with all of the contradictions, all of the capitalist contradictions among Europeans, there still exists the basis for a cross-class white solidarity movement. We got to be absolutely clear about that potentiality, because that is the foundation, the social and political foundation for the modern expressions of European fascism. And this notion that we need to be just looking at a Donald Trump, where you have these neoliberal fascists who have cleaned up and rehabilitated the fascists in Ukraine, we've got to understand what that means. It means that they are prepared to engage in political alliances with all kinds of forces in order to maintain this international colonial capitalist system. So that understanding that we have only ourselves to really depend on, other African people, other colonized people, that has to be the driving force for us to put aside whatever other contradictions we have and try to find a basis of unity among colonized people. And I hope that that's what you all get into in this second hour, in terms of finding those points of unity and finding how we strengthen in a real way our relationships, so that we can concentrate our power and coordinate our activities. That's the modern expression of internationalism. It's not just the abstract conversations, it's the structures that we build and the work that we engage in, like this month of action on AFRICOM that allows us to talk about the comprador class on the African continent, and then linking that back up to the compradors and the petty bourgeoisie in North America that allow for the U.S. Policy to continue on the African continent. These are the kind of connections we have to make, but those connections have to then be translated into more effective organizational forms.
No doubt. Ajamu, we know you got to break out.
Yeah, you said, I'm glad you set that tone, my black man. You said it right on.
Then he slammed the microphone.
Yep.
Yeah, you dropped the mic.
Threw it against the wall and walked off.
That's how you used to do when you lived in Georgia.
Drop the mic.
That's
I'm
right.
out of here.
I'm gonna tune in a little bit and try to catch up. Y'all take it easy, Africans.
I can't stay on point.
Peace, black, yeah.
Peace.
No doubt.
Yeah, you dropped the mic on that one. Yeah, I got
No
it.
doubt.
Points of unity on colonized people. Absolutely. Points of
No doubt.
unity of colonized people. You know, and what's really cool about that, I'm really glad he put it that way, so that when Marcus and Iman come on, well, you know, we've been having this discussion, because the majority of struggles of the migrants inside of Europe are Muslims. They're dealing with Islamophobia, and the migrants are dealing with the racism and struggles of the white working class to keep them out of the economy and to criminalize them. The prisons are full of migrants, just like black people fill the prisons here, and so what Ajamu was talking about, all of these people, all of these migrants come from colonized people, colonized nations, or nations that were involved in the balkanization of that resulted out of the Turkish Empire. So I think it's really important that that we really see how we could build structures right now, because when we talk about building up a mass a class struggle against the Negroes in Congress, we got to start holding their feet to the fire, going to the community where the community demands town hall meetings from their local representatives. What's your position on Africa and the coup in Burkina Faso? You see, and they got to give us what they told by the State Department, and then we got to tell them what they need to take back to the State Department. You see, otherwise we ain't gonna elect their ass no more. But that right there is tied into the fact, and when we bring on our next guest, it's tied to the fact that the U.S. is the driving force behind NATO. It's the driving force behind NATO, and therefore, when we talk about solidarity on the continent, on the European continent, we're talking about a lot of groups that understand that NATO and the EU are detrimental to the advancement of the European working classes and Muslims and minorities. They are down with getting rid of NATO, and the EU are being held accountable for its foreign policies. That dovetails with us getting rid of AFRICOM and the militarization of U.S. diplomacy, whether in Africa or Latin America.
No doubt. You mentioned you had something you want to add on before we Nefa?
Yeah.
I could, but I don't want to take, because I know you got and it's I'm trying to switch between. My mind is wanting to become a host and start asking questions to Dhoruba, but I'm not going to do that.
Good. We home today. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's a host today. I'm about to be on the panel in a minute.
It was just a question of this, because right now, even the so-called progressive and left kind of stuff is clouding up. Or making obscuring definitions of concepts like imperialism. And so, it like so I was kind of thinking if we could, I think it helps us if we come to clear understanding and help the people come to clear understanding on things like imperialism. One of the things that the Dhoruba said in terms of the jamming up the comprador class and the CBC is not, and making them answer to certain questions like AFRICOM and NATO is not so, because I get this sometimes, and legitimately so, that we think that the answer rests in them responding appropriately. But no, we have to do it also. One, we want to force whatever hand we can. It's a strategic thing. But also, to the extent that they don't respond correctly, we're exposing them. We are weakening, that class and the whole structure. So we're exposing them. And then I wanted to just bring up this question of imperialism, because a lot of, now you hear people uttering that Russia and China are imperialists, and that we need to, and then they're making it, they're complicating the issue, or trying to complicate it. So I almost wanted to ask Dhoruba how he responds to that kind of stuff. I've had my responses to it, but I wanted to just
I like how you say you almost want to ask him. Go ahead. It's good.
It's they're trying to portray this is a lack of history, and so this is why when we set up any type of relationship with comrades and movements on the continent, we have to have a professional lecture courses for the leadership of the movements. We sit down and we listen to a Professor Smalls when we're talking about how the modern states of Africa came into being off of tribal stuff, or we listen to the analysis of say Joy what's her name, or Carol Anderson. Yeah, or Carol Anderson. And our comrades on the other side are listening at the same time. You see, now they got questions. Now, imperialism, they're trying to portray Putin as some type of trying to reestablish, I don't know, the Russian Empire. The
The
Russians
Russian
never had it.
Empire.
They
Yeah.
never had an empire. It was the Tsarist Empire. Okay, it was Tsarist Russia. Putin was not. Putin's a nationalist. He was, he came out of what was the collapse of the Soviet Union. He came out the KGB. So he's straight up understanding that a threat to Russian integrity is a threat to Russian speaking people everywhere. And what people don't understand is that when the Soviet Union collapsed and the nations of Eastern Europe declared their independence, there were huge enclaves of Russian speaking people in the NATO, in the former Soviet bloc nations. The Donbass regions and stuff in the Ukraine are examples of that. Okay, so these people identify with Russia. So now what the NATO has done, because they did not dismantle NATO, they maintained it and moved the borders, the influence of NATO closer to the borders of Russia. Now Putin told them all the time, y'all don't cross this line, and they crossed it anyway. You see, and so we have what we have now. But they use imperialism on Putin and distort history to people think that he's trying to regain the territory of the former Soviet Union. So he's going to invade, he's going to use Ukraine for a pretext to annex Hungary and then Poland. It's total miss, and it's based on the fact that the American people are ignorant. But you can never underestimate the power of plenty of ignorant people.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
see?
check it.
So what I'm trying to
ahead.
say, the use of the terms like imperialism, the way we combat this is this is where the town hall meetings and these podcasts come into effect. The way we do this is we start to get these activists like the ones I was talking about with the scrambled up politics to come in to these movement town hall meetings and spout that dumb shit that they talking. Then we're able to present an analysis to them that doesn't have their egos involved in it, but only the fact that they need to go back to the history books. Okay. And then when we do that, that's what the type of pressure that we build up against these Negroes in the caucus who are consciously part of the comprador class. They're not functioning on no ignorance. They listen to the State Department briefings. They understand what political elite in each particular country is stealing the money and why we support them. You see?
So check it out real quick. We have talking about international solidarity. We had Ajamu come in from Colombia, and we have a couple other guests coming on. One from Vienna, and where's the other one from? Dhoruba?
I think they're both in Vienna right now.
Okay,
But one is with the bill.
Okay, tell us who they are. We're going to bring them on. Yeah.
Okay, the first one is Marcus Schultz. He's in the leadership of the Ajamu in Vienna, Austria. He was one of the major catalysts in bringing me to Europe on the last two occasions to talk to activists and Muslim activists and other activists. He's been a long member of the left and Muslims in Austria. He's worked with all types of anti-war and anti-fascist formations in Europe. The other is the very young sister, fiery sister, I come to find out, Imam Shakir. Yeah, Shakir. And this young sister is Palestinian. She lives in Austria. She's working with the BDS movement there, with Abdar al-Janoub there also. She's very, in fact, the introduction that was given during my tour, she wrote it. And I think I sent you copies of that introduction. And everybody asked me, well, who wrote this? Who was this, right? And it was this young sister, and I'm very proud to try to introduce her to you, because she's a fire starter. and so these are the two guests that I wanted to bring on to talk to Netfa, Sister Lukman, yourself, and Ajamu. I'm sorry he's gone now, but I think that they heard everything. Did you guys hear everything? Did Marcus and Iman? Did you hear our discussion? Okay,
Yes, yes.
good.
Yeah.
Good,
Cool,
good,
cool.
good. Because I want to take off where Ajamu left off about linking unity with colonized people and immigrant Tifa, migrant Tifa in Europe. So it's yours, Kalanji. You could ask Marcus and Iman.
No doubt. I
What do
mean,
they think about the solidarity that Ajamu was talking about, especially about NATO and
no doubt.
AFRICOM?
No doubt. First and foremost, definitely thank you all for coming on, Marcus and Iman. And Iman, I did read the letter Dhoruba sent. Dhoruba always giving us more people to burn it down with. So we appreciate you all bringing the flames as well. We know you were sitting in the wings waiting for a while. So we'll start with Marcus. What were your thoughts on what we're speaking on in regards to international solidarity and combating formations like NATO and AFRICOM, EU, etc.?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you, Black Power Media. We are constantly a follower of this channel, and thank you for this existence. And also thank you to Black Alliance for Peace. It's an important input. These assessments are important for us because this clear message against NATO and AFRICOM is important for us because we in Europe have this selective solidarity or the solidarity with the butt. So when they bombed Libya, the so-called left, or Dhoruba will call them the racist left, said, yes, we are against NATO, but Gaddafi is a brutal dictator, and so on and so on. It follows to AFRICOM. Yes, but in the Sahel there are Boko Haram, and we are not. It's not good that our military is there, but we have to fight the extremists. So this selective solidarity is the mainstream. It's established, and this is not really solidarity. And our position in Dhoruba was since the founding of Dhoruba in 2006 was not only to fight against this selective solidarity. Also, we wanted to bring dissident voices or voices from the global south to Europe, and not to talk about our views on the global south or our solutions. We wanted to hear solutions from the people who are there, because the left has this kind of illness that they have, for every conflict they have some solutions, 2-state solutions, 3-state solutions. They want this and that, but they never unlearned their Eurocentrism. And we learned when we invited scholars like Dhoruba or Palestinian scholar Joseph Massad or other people, that we learned a lot, and we have to learn in Europe. This is an important thing. And I want to give you a little example from yesterday evening. There was an event about the Sahel, and an Austrian journalist lives in Burkina Faso, and he wrote a book about the current situation in the Sahel. And he talked about the situation of the women, the borders, the migrants, the climate crisis. A lot of things he mentioned, and all important things, of course, but he never mentioned the Austrian army, the German army, the French army, or AFRICOM in the Sahel. Then in the audience, someone mentioned the AFRICOM, existence of AFRICOM in Niger, the big air drone base from AFRICOM. And one person said, this is not possible. He never heard about this. And then the person who lives in Burkina Faso said, yes, of course, we have this AFRICOM base there, but the people in the region, they find it good that AFRICOM is there because they fight terrorism and jihadism. This is a view from the mainstream, concerned, alternative, sometimes left civil society in Europe. And so we think we need a Black Alliance for Peace. We need campaigns like Black Alliance for Peace. And we wish to can follow you, or we could be integrated in your campaigns, because Europe, there is no left, no more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, Marcus, that I think causes me, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today, and for following Black Power Media. We so appreciate that so much. And you just said, though, and that just really struck me, that there's no left in Europe anymore. So what is the fight against fascism like, as we're looking at the rise of political fascism? I think what Dhoruba is accurately calling democratic fascism, like fascism that gets voted into office in so-called legitimate elections. So what are people even seeing the rise of this political fascism, this democratic fascism, as a fascist threat that they need to be as concerned about as they were with Hitler, Mussolini, and the rest of them? The original, the first wave, I guess.
The OGs.
The
OGs
of terror.
OG
terrorists. Yeah. Yes.
Right. So, Marcus, like, what is the fight against fascism? What does it look like in Europe now? Is there no coalesced, organized fight against fascism?
Yes, there is sometimes a protest against fascism when fascism comes with the face of fascism, like in Italy. In Italy now we have this right-wing person, Meloni, and she has open racist rhetoric, and she is anti-migration, and she is very, very brutal language. And then a lot of people are concerned because this is not our Europe. We don't want back to Nazi time, Mussolini time. But in the same time, in France or in Germany, where these right-wing parties are not in the government, these liberal, neoliberal Macron, Merkel, Scholz policies in these countries, they do the same thing. Immigration law, separation law, they special laws to secure police brutality. They do this all but they have another strategy, another rhetoric. They have face, and so the people are often confused. Like this, maybe it's comparable to the US, that people say we have to fight against Trump and his followers if we vote for Biden. And a lot of people with influence promote this. So, but Biden policy is the same as the Trump policy. They talk in different directions. And so this kind of neoliberal parliamentarian politics means that
Okay, well, Marcus looks like he's.
That's because he was breaking it down. See how they do?
He's going too hard.
Iman, just pick up where he left off.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me well. First of all, thank you for having me. Just want to briefly say that the introduction that you praised me for was written collectively in Ajamu, so it was collective effort. I have to credit everyone for that. Just to the point of democratic fascism, one thing that I noticed is, democratic fascism, there's the democratic part of it. So it's not Mussolini fascism. It's not Hitler fascism. So one characteristic that it describes is that, it's not blatant fascism. There's a different, it's not institutionalized in the sense of there's a law that says, this group will be discriminated no matter what they act upon. So there's this division into good and bad that happens indirectly. So you have the political good, the political evil. There's still discrimination against people from migrant backgrounds based on ethnic background, religious background, but there's still room for those people, those marginalized people, to be counted in as, the good as well, if they behave according to what the democratic fascist state wants them to act upon. So this is, I feel like the form of de facto apartheid, such as the one we've seen in South Africa or the one we're seeing right now with the Israeli occupation, or even, Jim Crow laws, this would cause too much resistance in the European, on European land. And this is something that Europe doesn't want to deal with anymore. And so they use more indirect ways to legitimize what they're doing. So, for example, we see this in political activism. There's movements that get co-opted, or movements that become, that are branded as acceptable. And these are generally movements that don't target the system, but that talk about, for example, individual acts of racism. And this is one thing that is a large issue in the West, I feel like, because the focus when talking about racism is about individual racist activities, or single groups that aren't even that politically strong, that are racist, and so we tend to focus on what could be a racist act, what could be politically incorrect, and not why this is even a thing to believe in, why this person even has a racist thought. And the history of racism, as I understand it, it comes from stereotypes that the colonizers have used to justify their colonialism. This even dates back to early imperial Rome, the Roman Empire. These people are barbarians, we can exploit them, we can murder them. These Africans are not, don't believe in the Catholic Church, let's go civilize them. These Orientals live their lavish lifestyles, let's go with Napoleon's troops and colonize them and tell them how to rule over themselves. And this lives on now because there's still, as we just heard and as we all know, there's still imperialist exploitation and imperialist warmongering that needs to be justified. And so the racist actions that we face as people from the global south in the global north are just the tip of the iceberg, are just, the result of how people in global south are portrayed, but it's not the root cause. And so this is an example for movements that are acceptable in the West. But if you go the other way and you explain the issue, the actual issue, which is about, imperialist interests, Western imperialist interests, and how they're protected, then you are a target of democratic fascism. Yeah, for example. But Marcus, you're back now. Maybe you want to finish your point.
Yes, I finished with this, that these protests are limited to a certain kind of definition of fascism, but now when the leadership changed in the parliamentarian system, then also the protest moves away, and a lot of people who are in this left direction, they often follow the big lines of Austrian, German, European foreign policy. Those who now are on the street in protest against Iran, They were never in the streets to protest against the sanctions against Iran. Never. You saw them never. And also they make solutions. Dhoruba mentioned it. The two-state solution is the official position of the German foreign policy in Palestine, the two-state solution. And so the left follows this. They say, oh yes, we need a two-state solution. And some other left say, oh, we need a one-state solution. But nobody has the courage to say, we need a free Palestine. We need a Palestine without colonization. Yes. And this is Europe. Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. I wanted to ask Iman, how important for you is this international solidarity that we was talking about? Forming the united front across the globe. What does that look like to you, and do you see it as realistic?
So that's a big topic. One quote that stuck with me from Dhoruba's lectures is, we need to define what side of the barricade we're on, and see which side the enemy is on, and we have to always take the other side of the barricade. And this is a crucial thing in understanding who to work with and what form the international solidarity should look like, because as Marcus just indicated, there are selective forms of alleged international solidarity that don't necessarily target the same enemy that we should be targeting. They don't target imperialists, to put it, to say it straight up. So, for example, I'm a BDS activist, as it was mentioned, and BDS Austria faces a lot of, political crackdown. There's resolutions, for example, in multiple municipalities against BDS, and there's a federal resolution as well. And there's an ongoing lawsuit after a mere Facebook post. So it was this Visit Palestine poster, the famous one, adjusted with the apartheid wall or annexation wall, and Visit Apartheid written on it. And the logo of the municipality of Vienna, which has a resolution against us, was visible on it. So we posted a picture of that poster on the street and commented sarcastically that we appreciate that the city of Vienna acknowledges Israel as an apartheid state. And then they said it was defamatory because they were connected to the anti-apartheid movement, or people could have understood that as a connection between the municipality of Vienna and the anti-apartheid movement against Israel. And they keep using argumentation that is currently being used against Dhoruba speaking in Vienna, the whole anti-Semitism allegations, and just the COINTELPRO argumentation as well from back then. Literally, it's been decades, and they still refer to that. And this is, to me, often a good indicator of who to work with. If it irritates those in power, then that's a good sign, because there's a lot of movements, as I just said, that are being co-opted and are being accepted. Also with the rise of NGOs in the 90s, especially with the rise of neoliberalism, this is just a whole different topic, just the conditions set by NGOs and the rise of neoliberalism in the global south due to NGOs and everything. But yeah, this is just one, just another example of the same issue of the global north after the fall of the bilateral world order as we knew it, trying to control movements and trying to split them up. It's the old tried and tested divide and conquer, and any effort to fight this division is fought and is it's just a threat to Europe if different movements come together and understand that they're supposed to be fighting the same thing and not just individual forms of oppression in their regional areas. And so Dhoruba kept bringing up that we have to connect and learn from each other, and obviously organize together, because then it would be stronger, but also because we would have so much to learn from each other. So the people that we met on the store with Dhoruba in Paris, Rome, Berlin, Frankfurt, and Vienna as well, they face, or we all face different forms of the same oppression. Basically, the enemy has this institutional memory. It knows how to fight movements. It knows how to break them down, how to co-opt them. And if we all face the same power, but in its different forms, in its different centers in the West, then we have so much to learn from each other, because then otherwise would be starting, building our knowledge from the very start and then failing and then trying to learn from our own history when other people have already dealt with different aspects that we would deal with. So, we should definitely come together and learn from each other, and also, attack the enemy by showing them that we know that we're all oppressed by the same enemy, and that we don't allow them to divide us. Yeah, but there's a lot more to be said.
It's all good. We got time here. We're live, Black Power Media, Riot Started TV. We're with Dhoruba Bin Wahad, Netfa Freeman, Jackie Lukman, Iman Shakur, Marcus Schultz, and your favorite host on the planet, besides you, Jackie, of course, Kalonji Changa.
But now I know where you got the on the right side of the barricade phrase from.
Well,
now I know where that came from.
I mean,
Thank you, Dhoruba.
well, he was on the side of the barricades with me, so I think that's what it was. I'm not sure, but then something happened when we was over there. But anyway, but definitely, Dhoruba, I do learn a lot from Dhoruba, and I also know he starts a lot of trouble. So I'm sure Vienna is never the same, will never be the same again. So I'm looking forward to visiting and being banned in this tradition. I posed a question earlier about AFRICOM, EU, and NATO over on the continent, and I know that NETFA and BAP and PACA and a number of other folks have a campaign right now to push AFRICOM out. What does that look like, and how realistic is it, and how can we collectively, because we're talking about international solidarity, and indeed Africa has to, it must be free, it must be liberated. How do we how can we functionally position ourselves to drive these folks out, or at the very least heighten the contradictions and bring awareness and get other folks involved in that in this struggle?
So if it's not possible to get AFRICOM out of Africa, then it's not possible to be liberated, because as you put, it's just, these are inextricable or indispensable aspects of our struggle. Now, the answer to your question, I'm just going to tell what the campaign is and where we are so far. So the Black Alliance for Peace has the U.S. Out of Africa Shut Down AFRICOM campaign. It's actually a sub campaign of our broader Jackie, you might have to tell me, to end the war on African people in the U.S.
home and abroad. Mm-hmm.
Is it home and abroad? Okay.
In the U.S. and abroad, yeah.
In the U.S., we might not say your home. Yeah, I think we
yeah, I gotta stop saying that.
I was confused too. I'm like, where y'all home at? Good.
And that's our kind of the flagship campaign, was the U.S. Out of Africa Shut Down AFRICOM, and then the rest we, as we evolve, we kind of, refine and put things in, because we also know we have the domestic side of what's happening in the U.S. We call it domestic. Those of us who are in the United States, we're subject to these same, forms of militarization and policing and fascism, basically, right? So that there's the overall thing, then there's the specifically Africa Shut Down. So we're focusing on AFRICOM because we realized the AFRICOM, and having emerged in 2007, 2008, was really an expression of the militarized crisis of capitalism. That was like the name of our last webinar too. Capitalism being in crisis, it's unsustainable, it has no credibility around the world, and the one of the responses, the reactionary responses of the pan-European capitalist patriarchy is militarization. And we're seeing it in the world. On the African continent, that is seen through the emergence in the AFRICOM. There was already some U.S. military presence in Africa, military, things going on, operations. What AFRICOM has come to do is coordinate that and increase it and strengthen it and proliferate it. And so our thing is the one of the grounds, the fertile ground that helps it flourish is the ignorance of our people. There is some ignorance even on the continent of Africa itself about the role and the purpose of AFRICOM, or even its very existence. It's just not known to a lot of people. And so we know that, and we've discussed a lot of it here, is that part of attacking this infrastructure is political education and awareness of the masses, confronting those forces that held it up in terms of going and doing the actions and campaigns that force them to have to explain themselves, and also have to do things like, for example, one of the demands of the campaign is to hold for the CBC to initiate an investigation of the impact of AFRICOM on the African continent, and that not just for them to do it because we know we can't trust them, that the part of that demand is for that investigation and for the hearings of them, the presentation of that, the results of that investigation, to include civil society inside the U.S. and on the African continent itself. So part of it is to expose it. Another part of the campaign, and we're doing this through the U.S. Out of Africa network, where people join the campaign, mostly initiated by people in the United States. We're joining the campaign, and so we're doing things like the International Month of Africa, International Month of Action Against AFRICOM. Right now, this is our third one. We're asking people to do all kinds of teach-ins, direct actions, things like that heighten the existence of AFRICOM and the role that it plays. And this is around the world. So the U.S. Out of Africa network, and part of the structural part, and this is where Ajamu was talking about, we got to build structures, is that we have a leader, like trying to formulate direction of this network and of this campaign with people on the continent of Africa themselves, and not just anybody, but the radical movements and organizations. So we have a steering committee of that network. And that the steering committee is comprised of people from different parts of Africa, radical movements in Kenya and Guinea-Bissau and Zimbabwe and Nigeria, and so this is part of the structural thing, and creating that organic link with the people on the continent, not just. And then we know that there's a class struggle that we got to engage in. No matter where we are, we got people who will be witting collaborators with imperialism. We also know there's strategic, and don't want to make the answer too long, but there's strategic and tactical considerations, differences or particularities depending on where you are. Over here, there's the ability, and more of the ability here in U.S. where I am in Washington, D.C., because of the facade that democratic fascism likes to take, that we can do things a little bit more out in the open in terms of direct action demonstrations and whatnot. Some places in Africa, you can't do that. You put your life in danger. So we know we have to allow our comrades, wherever they are, to kind of determine what forms this resistance takes and what forms this, this exposure and whatnot of it. And that we also want to be able to support that with the advice and consultation of the people on the ground. And we know that we have to do that. So that's kind of it. And we know that this is all part and parcel of the broader manifestation of imperialism, broader manifestations of U.S. and NATO militarism of the planet. That we have to expose these things, we have to weaken them, because we know this Southcom, there's 11 U.S. command centers, and then all of this is part of NATO. And like I think Dhoruba and the brothers said, that NATO really, the U.S. is just really extension of U.S. militarism, really, while people might not realize it. And so we have to weaken all of these things. And also respect at the same time, because these things invoke different expressions of resistance, some of them more or less conscious in terms of their really understanding some, and that we have to respect the forms of resistance in different places. The Black Alliance for Peace, and I end with this, and people might, and we talked about this earlier, we're for peace, but we're not talking about some kind of liberal peace, right, where, we're not pacifists, that this as pacifists, as just in principle peace, non-pacifists or something, we respect the right of resistance for everybody, no matter what it takes, even if it's armed struggle or whatever. And that we have to, that has to be, we respect that. We have to respect it, and we have to know that there's just certain, we know from history tells us that the enemy sometimes gives us no choice but to do things, in terms of a physical defense of ourselves. And so we have to be able to allow for that and understand that the only path to real peace is for there to be justice, and for the only way for justice is for there to be a struggle. We got to principally struggle. We have to confront contradictions. We got to organize. We got to create self-defense and survival programs wherever we are. And we have to link up our people internationally. I hope that answers your question. No,
it's definitely on point. And I see my third cousin removed Dhoruba wants to add on. So
I want to jump in, because when we, organizationally, so that Marcus, there's a confluence between what Nefta laid out, what we got going on in terms of mobilizing against AFRICOM in Africa and in the different regions. And I think one of the ones where we could really dovetail from Europe is with the Sahel and NATO in the Sahel and AFRICOM. And so when we say AFRICOM out of Africa, knowing that this is a protracted struggle and it's a reflection of the military diplomacy of the nation state, of the U.S. nation state, of the empire, we also then have to deal with the empires forcing NATO to take certain positions in Africa, and so I think the confluence for this is with comrades in Europe, working with as branches of PAC and BAP, focusing on NATO's involvement in the Congo, in the Sahel, and in East Africa, especially in Djibouti, especially in the Horn. So I don't think we really got. I think we got everything sub-Sahara really locked down, but I think that approaching that means that the organizing, for instance, in Austria and Germany, will require a lobbying, will require a challenging the so-called left and environmentalist and green parties, to be more upfront, to get the government to be more upfront about its military use of military in Africa to support American hegemony and American policies. And I think that applies too in reverse for us in the Middle East. I think that we really have to draw on the Muslim, on the Ummah, the Muslims here in the United States, that we know imams who have anti-imperialist understanding, and also we have, of course, in the lead here is the collective political prisoners. I've learned about political prisoners from the Red Army faction that's still in prison in Germany, and we have Imam Jamil, who's known as the missing imam in Turkey, who's in prison. We have our political prisoners who do need the same support that the Palestinian political prisoners need. So I'm saying that there's room for Marcus and the coalitions to come in under PAC and BAP in organizing to get with you guys and let's formulate a strategy on how we could get data information based on NATO's support and in sub-Saharan Africa, you know, and I know the Israelis are up in there training intelligence folks too, and which is something that we don't really deal with because the Israeli police train with American police here in the U.S.
Mhm.
Right there in Georgia, right in Atlanta.
You see,
Washington, D.C.
so it behooves us, NEFTA, to get this type of. This is what I meant about a central database, which I think I sent to Kalanji, but he said he didn't see it in the email. But this is what I talked to about with you too, Marcus, about us having a central database, a central information base, and conducting teaching single focus seminars by one activist expert, for instance, on this particular one particular thing. But the database, this common database, is something that if we pool our resources and get our little nerds on each end of the Atlantic together to say, okay, this is how the database is going to work. This is going to be the password for the organizations that's part of the United Front. Nobody has everybody just don't have access to it. It's the member nations who are coordinating these campaigns. We have access. It's like like OneDrive. You know, the OneDrive where we all can edit the document together.
Mhm.
Well, this is what we need to do too in terms of when we talk about a united front. The United Front's purpose is to make information intelligence too and useful to every movement in every locale. And that we be able to be posted up and know that we all need on this particular date to do certain things in support of what's happening, say, in Kenya, okay, or in Somalia. The U.S. is, you know, the U.S. has reasserted itself into Somalia, you know, and we know that so what I'm saying is, so I don't want to go on and on, but I want NEFTA and Marcus to really get together, you guys, and Marcus expressed that they want to come under the discipline of BAP in terms of coordinating activities in Africa and against NATO. So I think that one of the things that Jackie and Marcus and you guys, y'all really need to Zoom together and get that going. You know, that means I can say adios amigos, and I'm out of here. And y'all can keep it moving. You know.
Before you say
that's an
adios
organizer
amigos,
right there. That's
yeah.
that's I'm sorry. That's an OG motherfucking
Oh,
organizer.
no,
right
he know how to do it. He'll work the
Yeah.
hell out of everybody and dip off and burn a split. But anyway, I want to touch on you mentioned political prisoners, and
Yeah.
I want to talk about us unifying a political prisoner formation. Right? How do we go about political prisoner freedom campaigns? How do we go about unifying? Because I think it's imperative at this stage, because, you know, for example, here in the U.S., we have all types of different definitions and thoughts on what a political prisoner is. You know what I'm saying? You have the quote unquote popular political prisoners, and you have political prisoners who are political prisoners who folks don't even know exist. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that I loved about working around Black August, because of the fact that there's so many individuals who are buried inside of these gulags who, if they're not a part of certain organizations, or if they weren't popular with people, you know what I'm saying, then they would be ignored. And I know that you, for example, Dhoruba, being a political prisoner of 19 plus years, I know that there was times that there were certain folks, just like Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who didn't necessarily want to include you on that political prisoner list. So how do we tighten up the ranks, not only here in the U.S. with quote unquote U.S. political prisoners, but on the international level? I think that it's mandatory and it's a necessity. What's your thoughts?
Oh, I think that's very important. I managed to get a little bit going in Geneva and Turkey around Imam Jamil and the sister Afia Anwangaza, who did a petition for the Angola brothers and stuff. We you know, I managed to get the Turks to pay for her, you know, to get back and re-argue that case. And I really feel good about that because a few months later, Sekou got parole, you know, and I think that was a direct result of them having to answer to long-term imprisonment and incarceration as torture. Having said that, when I was on the tour, Marcus knows that when I was on the tour, I was made aware of Red Army faction prisoners that that are still in prison there in Germany. Isn't that correct, Marcus? You're on mute. Still on mute.
You're still muted, Marcus.
Your mic is mute. Yeah, there you go.
In Germany, there are no more prisoners from Red Army faction, but the people in Italy said that they have also 20 political prisoners who are 40
it was
years
Italy.
now
I'm
in
sorry.
jail.
Yeah. It was Italy. I'm sorry, my bad. You know, all the cities burned together, but yeah, it was Italy, and we have Silvio Berardini in Italy, so we got it made. You know, Silvio Berardini is a comrade of Sekou, and Mutulu Shakur. You know, she was in May 19th. She spent 25 years in prison. You know, 20 there and 5 in Italy. So she's there on the ground. So we could organize with her. Then there's the Palestinian prisoners. You know, of whom there are many. You know, and so I think that what you're saying is good. I think we should go with our own left formation for the political prisoners. That's Jericho. You see, because we already have a definition of political prisoners there. They already plugged in the Black August and all that other peripheral stuff. You know, whether the woman in jail, the sister in jail in Moscow was a political prisoner because she had oils and she had, you know, THC oil. You know, is not really relevant. But and the other thing was I really think those two things that we just touched on is the major beneficiaries of this get together. That's getting together Marcos and the Alliance and the BDS under some type of direction and discipline with BAP and PAC in dealing with NATO and stuff. I really feel good about that going to happen. And I think that the next thing is, I think it's doable that we could do a virtual database, a virtual center in a matter of a couple of weeks so that we could begin to pour in the type of information that Marcos talked about the left or what's left of the left in Europe into this common database so we could see where we could begin to put pressure on NGOs that have status in the UN. This is one of the things I wanted to say. A lot of the things that we think we don't have no leverage with, we do have leverage with individual NGOs. Although, as Nefta pointed out, certain people can't get into the streets in their respective country because it's dangerous, you know. But we got, you know, Harlem's right down about 3 miles from the UN. You see what I'm saying? So we can put pressure on that same government, you know, by bringing attention to their. I mean, there's a whole lot of things we can do with them. You know,
and
we
that
could
got embassies in DC.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in New York, man. We find girlfriends. So like, you know, I don't play fair because they don't play fair. So what I'm saying is we could bring pressure on these people in a certain way. And in terms of our comrades in Europe, you know, there is the European Union. And the European Union supposedly in the European Parliament supposedly represents the citizens of the member nations of the European common market and all of these things. So we should realize that if we could have a common database, if we could bring together the struggles of the folks like Marcus was talking about in the left there, where they have this exclusionary thing. You know, this is the acceptable left, and then there are those who can't demonstrate with us. They're not acceptable because they're too radical about Palestine, or they're too radical about white supremacy, and you know they're not cool, right? So we really need to empower our comrades there who are in that position through, through NGOs and stuff. We got to remember the next level of people that we have to go to are people that are sympathetic to us, but that's afraid of us. And that's the NGOs.
I want to.
I got to tell you, I'm really excited about the prospect of, well, not the prospect, the fact that we will be organizing with Marcus and Iman to make the connections between, shutting down AFRICOM, pointing out that the headquarters of AFRICOM is not anywhere on the continent, it's in Germany, and making the connections between the oppression of African people and the denial of human rights of Europeans, and connecting that to immigrant struggles, and connecting all of that to freeing Palestine. This is when we started this conversation, I think both you, Dhoruba, and Ajamu pointed out how dangerous a time this is that we are in, and I've definitely felt that, and like my family is because I work for Sputnik, they're like, have they fired you yet? Have they shut you down yet? Because we know they're trying to, so they're very worried about me, and they even understand how dangerous this time is, and people who were formerly not political at all are now asking me, well, what's really going on with what I'm hearing in the news? So that's a positive thing. But I think, out of repression and this formation right now, this conversation we've had over this past hour, almost 2 hours, is an example of how repression breeds resistance. But resistance means nothing if you're not organized.
Absolutely.
Resistance is ineffective if you're not organized. And if you don't have international solidarity, I don't think we can defeat this system. But this right here gives me hope. So I really appreciate you all. And I really look forward to working with you, Marcus, and Iman even more. And thank you as always, Dhoruba. You are one of my heroes, my mentor.
I taught him everything you know, Jackie. Don't even trip.
Stop it, cut it out. I know that's not true.
You told him everything he knows, but you didn't teach him everything you know, huh?
but listen, I wanna say here before I forget, and that senility sets in. Damn, see, I don't forgot. Damn.
Take a spark and come back.
The lecture series. I'm talking about people like we'll get Gerald Horn, try to get him for like an hour to commit to an hour, and then we can get the leaders in different groups and movements, whether and then there's an ally radio station in Rome. It's Rome, right? Where we spoke, Marcus, is Rome?
Yes.
Yeah.
In Rome.
Okay, so we're gonna put you in touch with them. Yeah, so y'all can simulcast in Rome and here. That's a doable right now as we speak. But the thing is, I want to get a list, Nefta, of individuals like maybe Gerald Horn, and we pick a subject so that all of the leaders of these different groups in the coalition, in the United Front, can hear this lecture at one time in one place and write their own response to it, and how it's relevant to them or not relevant to them, and what should they learn about this. And then we'll have a little committee maybe to analyze this, and then we do a newsletter that comes out, you see. But what I really want to do is I want to tap in. We got some brothers that could do expert classes, on a particular history of U.S. involvement in let's say Western Europe. I've learned a lot from listening to people like Gerald Horn. I've learned a lot listening to people like Professor Anderson. You see, I mean, and they could give expert stuff, and they're storytellers. You see, so and so I really want those sessions to be planned as a political education for all of us. You see, and that's really what I wanted to get out of this personally. I mean, y'all can do all the organizational shit and barricade and throwing bricks and burning shit up. That's all good. That's necessary. But I wanted to get
non-violent, brother.
Absolutely. That's why we call the Black Alliance for Peace.
Yeah.
but we know if you want peace, you got to fight for it.
Right there.
So check it out.
Being nonviolent and peace is not necessarily.
Hey man, listen, man. Hey,
I know he's joking.
That's for the airways. Anyway,
Right.
check. Understand.
Understand the mass line, man.
Absolutely, the
Right.
mass line and the party line. Let's be clear. But anyway, we're grateful to have you all on, and we're going to continue this discussion in the near future. Matter of fact, during Congo Week, Tuesday, October 18th, we'll have a Pan-African forum similar to what it is we have here, with a number of different folks from around the number of Africans from around the globe as well. We want to make sure that on this platform that we bring you as much information and politics as possible, because it's not too many places you're going to find like this. I mean, there are a number of different dope podcasts and outlets and all that, but allow me to say that we stand alone with what we bring to the table. And and if you disagree, then challenge it. But the reality is, we have some great folks who are practical coming on, because we can get a whole lot of theory from anywhere. It's a whole lot of folks out there that got the rap down pat, but when it comes to hitting that pavement is different. So definitely we appreciate Iman and Marcus, of course, Netfa and Dhoruba and Ajamu, and my wonderful co-host Jackie Lukeman, who I might invite again on the podcast. Yeah, I can't give you too much credit at one time. But anyway, I want to
before you go, I want to make sure that Marcus, Nefta, and Jackie are hooked up in real time.
Right you'll now, make sure that I make sure.
Yeah, because
I get drugged into the program.
Because you don't want to do all the emails and all of this stuff. You the ad hoc data center for the
so I just been now I'm communication secretary. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead. I want to give Iman and Marcus some closing words, since you all haven't you all didn't get to rap too much, but give us some closing words of solidarity, and we'll take it from there. These other folks, I see them all the time. So.
If I can say before they both, because I didn't address Iman and Marcus specifically, but just to say that we look forward to, very good to meet you, and on behalf of Black Alliance for Peace, we look forward to building revolution with you.
No doubt.
Thank you so much for having us. It was really lovely to hear everything you guys had to say, and it's an honor to be here. I really just want us to learn from each other, to stay connected and hopefully build something together. There's a lot of bourgeois movements rising in the Muslim community, in the Palestinian community, also in the Black community. They try to do that with the rise of Black capitalism and everything, and just overcoming this and actually coming together and addressing our same oppressor. This is what we need. It's technically not even that difficult. We just need to stay connected. And thank you, Dhoruba, especially for the encouraging words. This was a very motivating, tour with you, and thank you all for having us here.
No doubt. Thank you, Iman. Marcus, my man, what you got to say?
I want to also thank you, and it was a great pleasure, and it was an honor to be with you. And we have to thank Dhoruba. He is our OG, and he is also the bridge builder who brought us together. And yes, I will write Netfa via Twitter or Insta. I will write the Black Alliance for Peace, and then we can think about and create some campaigns, or we not create campaigns because we want to follow this campaign that you rolled out. So yes, we should think in the future that we need your strength. This is important for us. Yet we in Europe need voices like you, and this was a very great pleasure and honor for us to be with you. Thank you.
Right on. We appreciate you all stopping through, and we will have you on again. And I suspect we'll be talking rather soon. especially with Dhoruba giving us marching orders on, who to email and what stamps to put up. Definitely, man. Appreciate, all of you coming on board. And, again, stay tuned to Black Power Media. We have a number of different powerful programs coming up, number of different public events. Stay tuned. If you have anything going on in your community, we want to make sure that we get out information dealing with organizing. This isn't an entertainment program. This is about political education, and it's about our advancement. And that's why we started this platform. We didn't start it because we wanted to make friends or be cool or any of that type of stuff. We wanted to make sure that we drew out and heighten the contradictions as to what's going on here and abroad. So again, we thank you all, comrades, for your service, as they say, and we look forward to rocking with you soon. Checking out the remix. It's just too many damn shows on here. Checking out Riot Starter TV. Stay tuned, stick around, and stay ready for revolution. We out. Peace.
Peace out.
Peace.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
Okay.